Today's question is, how do I make it through travel with back pain? And so there are some great tips here that are going to make traveling with back pain so much easier, so much more comfortable, so you can get to your destination and hopefully enjoy that time with your family, friends, or loved ones. I'm Dr. Nick, and I am here to serve you guys and help you all overcome back pain once and for all using natural means from the comfort of your own home. So let's get started on this. There are really three main objects here that we need to think about when we're doing. Oftentimes when we're traveling, we're sitting for prolonged periods of time. There's a little bit more standing, and there's a lot of walking involved in getting from point A to point B. So we're going to go over each of those aspects, how we can make them a little bit better and a little bit easier, and identify some of those trigger points where people can often get tripped up. Now, the first place that people get tripped up is sitting. We have to sit often, whether it's going to be in the Uber or cab that you're going to, whether it's on a plane, on a train, wherever that may be, you're going to be sitting, right? And we're going to be sitting often in these chairs that A, we're not used to, and B, probably aren't ergonomically designed, right? We don't have exactly the amount of support. They don't quite fit us. Maybe they're a little bit too big or a little bit too small, or we're going to be crammed in like sardines, because that's airlines these days, right? Nobody actually gets any leg room, even if you buy the extra stuff. So we want to set up ourselves for success. Ideally, we're looking for 90-degree angles there at the ankles, knees, and hips. We want to create those 90-degree angles as much as possible. So making sure that we're not tilted off to the side, we're not, that even if the seat has a little bit of a slump, seeing if we can find an area that allows us to sit evenly through our sit bones, through our hip bones back here. We want our feet to be flat on the floor, okay? If you have to scoot up in the chair, that can be a challenge for a lot of people, as we can be flexion intolerant, especially if we're dealing with a disc herniation. What I would suggest is creating your own lumbar support. I suggest you travel with a sweater. Take that hoodie or sweater, whatever it may be, and you want to just kind of fold that up like you're going to put it in a drawer, and then give it a nice little roll, okay? This might be a bit too big, but what we want to do is actually find the level of support that you need. So for me, it's going to be about here, about half a roll in. And I'm going to place that with the sweater part, with the excess up. And I'm going to place that right in the small of my back. And then I want to almost wedge myself back to push back in the chair so that it helps me to maintain upright. It gives me that support as I sit back. My knees and my feet are at that 90-degree angle. And now I have a little bit of support. I know that I'm not going to end up here, but it just gives me that bit of comfort so that I can make it through a little bit longer. Step 2 is to find your pelvic neutral, even in sitting. Many people, not everybody, but many people suffer from an anterior pelvic tilt. So we have a little bit of excessive lordosis, so excessive curve in the lower back there, and our pelvis is naturally tilted forward. So even when we give ourselves that extra support, I still feel a lot of pinching or tension or tightness at that lower back. What you can do here in sitting is actually a mini posterior pelvic tilt. And so we're going to allow our pelvis to roll backwards a little bit, which decreases that curvature, the angle of that curvature in the lower back, and allows me to sit back a little bit smoother with my lumbar support. Once you notice that, that's going to take off a little bit of tension naturally, and it even should help you to engage your deep core muscle, which is your transverse abdominis. If we can do that and support that lumbar spine while continuing to breathe, it's going to be huge. It's going to be huge. So you just engage your core, you found your neutral spine, you decreased tension off the disc, you added a little bit of support, and you sat with proper ergonomics. Boom, 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 and you did it in under 5 minutes, right? And when you get good at this, and this starts to become your norm, man, your endurance starts to change. So I suggest that you start practicing before your trip. Many of us work from home these days, or even in the office. Take that same sweater, recreate the situation, see what you're going to do. Where is my neutral spine and what is my functional endurance threshold? That's a really important thing to know. You might even want to, jot that number down in your activity journal and take notes of that. So I know, okay, I can get to 30 minutes. I can get to 40 minutes. I can get to an hour of sitting before my back starts to say, that's had enough. We all have limitations with, everything, whether it's energy, whether it's finances, whatever it may be. It's okay to have limitations of the amount that you are able to sit. That's when you change things. Okay, that's when I go for a walk, or that's when I do some seated exercises. Notice that exercises aren't the first thing that I go to. It's just setting yourself up for success and then knowing when you're going to need to go to step 2. The next thing that we're going to talk about, though, is the ability to stand and the ability to really hold our suitcase, hold our luggage, hold our bags. If you're wearing a backpack, that really might pull you back a little bit, especially if it's bottom heavy. So use a chest strap if possible, and even better, if it has a clip around the waist, that's what you want to cinch up. If it doesn't have a clip around the waist, then use the straps that tie into the arm carries and tie that up and cinch that up and really make sure that the backpack hangs on your hips. This might give you a little bit of support. Actually pull that pelvis into a little bit of a posterior tilt and just sit on that lumbar spine in a nice fashion. Rather than pulling you back into extension, we want the pelvis to be supported and to almost traction down so that you can find your neutral spine. You also want to make sure that you're able to stand in proper posture. And this gets overlooked so much, but it actually is such a key to be able to move forward and to stand for longer. We're going to have to stand in lines. We're going to have to stand up and wait for something somewhere. You're not always going to be able to sit, nor do you always want to sit if you're dealing with sciatica or radiculopathy. But being able to stand in proper alignment is huge. So quick tips, make sure to keep the feet about 6 to 8 inches apart. You want to keep the feet fairly in alignment or at least symmetrical if the toes do turn out a smidge. Keep the weight between the hips and the heels. Knees are unlocked. Let me know if you're watching this in the comments below if you tend to lock your knees in standing. Keep those knees unlocked. You don't want to lose any height there, but we want to make sure that the knees soften. So see what happens to my pelvis here, guys? Watch that. As I lock the knees, I come into more of an anterior tilt. I increase tension in that lumbar spine. When I unlock the knees, my pelvis naturally finds neutral a bit easier, and I want to keep my weight through my hips and my heels so that I align myself a little bit better. So proper posture is not stand up straight and really tense everything, hold my muscles engaged, throw my shoulder blades back. That actually places excessive pressure on the spine that you don't need. So allow yourself to find a neutral, find equal, and you can also adopt the 5 basic strategies for standing posture. You can stay in alignment onto one side or staggered, or we can do what's called the Captain Morgan and bring up one leg onto a little stool or ledge, right? And that can decrease some pressure as well. When we go to one side, many people will tend to lock out the knee, drop the hip, pelvis becomes unaligned, and I'm just hanging on my joints here and my ligaments. I don't want to find stability through my joints. I want to find stability through my muscles. This is one of the FMT 360 principles that we teach in our training program. So it's fine to shift your weight, but notice that my shoulders and my pelvis stayed aligned here as I shifted weight, yes? You can also stagger the stance, going forward to backwards. Staggered stance is huge, especially if you're bringing like a suitcase or pushing or pulling something onto a conveyor belt, something like that. I'm now shifting my weight using my feet, but my back stays very symmetrical rather than this push or pull motion from the lower back. So that's really, really important. So proper posture doesn't just mean that I stand like a robot straight up and down. It actually means that I'm flexible, I'm mobile, and that I can maintain neutral in multiple planes of motion with multiple different opportunities here for stability. Tip number 3 here is to use your functional movement patterns and functional movement positions to move your suitcase, to move your bags, to make, change position as we go through life. We're going to have to get that suitcase out of the trunk or pack the car, and a lot of that requires some form of bending. But we want to use our hip hinge patterns to do this. So our split stance deadlift, our squat, our actual deadlift, our lunge, these are postures and positions that you've practiced in your workouts, and so they become a little bit easier during life. These need to be your natural movement patterns that you choose because you're comfortable with them now. So exercise is not just about, I need to do 3 sets of 10 and they said it'll make these muscles stronger. No, it's actually about implementing them into real life. So that is very, very important. I would definitely use things like a rolly suitcase if possible, rather than something that you're carrying, especially for longer distances. Work smarter, not harder. Allow family, friends, or loved ones to help you out, especially if you are compression intolerant or have trouble with some form of compression. We want to then take the load off the spine and use assistive devices where needed. It's okay for this time. If you have a long trip ahead, it's okay to use a brace or to use some taping to help you to be a little bit more aware. It's okay to use a hiking pole or a cane or a walker if needed. All right? Use what you need to get through as pain-free as possible and set yourself up for success. This is one of those areas where we just don't want to approach it with pride, right? We want to be mindful about the tasks that we're going to be taking on. And with that in mind, let's talk about some activities that you can do to become back pain free before and during your trip. This varies person to person, whether you're dealing with sciatica or you're dealing with lumbar facet syndrome, whether you're dealing with SI joint dysfunction. There should be about 3 to 5 movements, which we call your essential program. These are the movement patterns and movements that will consistently decrease your pain 2 to 4 points on average on that 0 to 10 pain scale quickly within 5 to 10 minutes. And so before your trip, taking time to do that essential program, whether it be to centralize the pain, whether it be to decrease the amount of pain in that lower back, or whether it be just to loosen things up and start to move a bit, that essential program is huge. If you need more help identifying your essential program, go ahead and comment below. The other tip that I have is to use your breath. Hyperoxygenating the body and making sure that we are breathing is a really big tip that a lot of people forget. When we are in pain, one of the first things that we forget to do is breathe. We all tend to clamp down, slow down our breath, take these deep, shallow breaths. I hurt. I'm rolling up, and before I know it, I'm taking these little shallow breaths that don't allow me to get the oxygen in that my muscles and tissues desperately need. So take time with diaphragmatic breathing. Really inhale from that diaphragm. It's right at the base of the ribs and right at the base of the lungs. As that diaphragm drops, as you inhale, the pelvic floor should also drop. And I want you to take 10 deep breaths. Yes, breathe in and out, back to back to back, 10 times. When's the last time we did that? And go ahead and notice what your back does, what your pain does. 10 breaths. And then walk away and then come back and do 10 more. Or sit there as you're in travel, during travel, and you want to do these things before you get too bad. Don't wait until you're already at the top of the mountain, right? Because then it's a much more challenging process to decrease those pain levels. You want to start early. As soon as the back starts to creep up, as soon as it starts to talk, listen. Listen and start to use these tools and tricks that I'm giving you, right? So posture modification, little essential exercises, whatever that may be for you, breathing patterns, huge. There are other ideas like neural mobility, like muscular activation, all types of tips and tricks that we can apply here to make sure that your next travel is a bit more comfortable and even, hey, enjoyable, because that's why we're traveling, right? That's what it's all about. I hope this video has been insightful for you and helpful for you. If you have questions, and there is a lot here to unpack, go ahead and comment below. I would love to answer them or create new content specifically answering your question in future posts.